Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm thrilled to be here today. I am totally passionate about cooperatives, as I know all of the rest of the panelists are today as well. So excited to be here. Just a little bit about Georgia Organics and specifically our Farmer Services team. If you're not familiar with our work, we are existing to help small farmers across the state through a variety of direct services that could look like health insurance, helping folks get health insurance, to direct case management and investment support into specific operations, helping folks get access to new markets, emergency direct COVID relief. We're open to a lot of different, and of course our good food for thought content and educational workshops for our farmers and other constituents to participate and learn about all of the great work that we have going on in Georgia. So I'm very excited again to be here with you all. And if you want to learn more about Farmer Services and the work that we do, feel free to get in touch. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Terrence to start with some introductions. Thank you so much. Oh, and also there's going to be a poll that will pop up so we can get to know you guys a little bit better. And it's just going to ask about the field of work that you're in. So thank you so much.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I wish I could see you all, but I'm sure you're there. And I want to say thank you for joining us. My name is Terrence Courtney. I'm the Director of Cooperative Development and Strategic Initiatives for the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. The Federation is a 53 going on 54-year-old, what I like to describe as a civil and human rights organization that's a little different than some civil and human rights organizations you may be familiar with, in that from the beginning, the Federation understood the connection, or what some people call the intersection, between race and class, economics, and white supremacy. And we focused early on cooperative development, land retention, and advocacy as the tools by which we create more justice. And I'll be glad to talk a little bit more about that in my comments. But thank you for the opportunity, and welcome everybody.
I'll go ahead and pass it over to Eric.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Eric Simpson, small farmer in the West Central Georgia area. My farm is New Eden Ecosystem, but I'm here today representing the organization that I farm with and that I'm a member of, which is the West Georgia Farmers Cooperative, which is also a 50-plus-year-old organization. We'll be 55 this year. And of course, look forward to sharing some of the things that we've done, that we're doing, and that we're going to do. And glad to be here.
Thanks, Eric. Matthew, take it away.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matthew Epperson. I'm founding executive director for the Georgia Cooperative Development Center. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded in 2017. So we're considerably younger than some of the folks you've just heard from, but hopefully we're able to kind of make up for that with some youthful energy about what we're able to bring to the cooperative space. So we're basically dedicated to providing assistance primarily to startup cooperatives, and that's across, to the four corners of Georgia, all different types, shapes, and sizes, producer-owned, consumer-owned, worker-owned as well. So all different types of co-ops, all sorts of different industries. Though for today, we'll be mostly focusing obviously on the food system work. We do work with a variety of other types of cooperatives and other spaces as well. And I just wanted to quickly mention a couple things about our organization. We have 4 different pillars to our work. So we focus on education, that's one of them, networking, technical assistance, and then research. So we're kind of dabbling in all those different areas to try to provide, a supportive ecosystem to startup cooperatives in Georgia. We're trying to follow up also some economic impact data. So that's some of the research that we do. We found that, according to the University of Wisconsin Center for Co-ops back in 2009, there were about 300 cooperatives in Georgia. So we part of what we need to do is update the data of what's available, of like what is the economic impact of co-ops in Georgia, to continue to try to advocate to policy leaders, opinion leaders about hopefully providing some more supports. And we can get a little bit later on into, what are some of the more specific policy elements we can advocate for co-ops, but we want to be able to get some good data to help back that up. So far, we've assisted around 40 different cooperative steering committees, all of which are in different stages of trying to form their organization. We are a nonprofit organization, so we're grant dependent. We're still, raising funds. So we can get a little bit into like what the fundraising model looks like when you're a 501c3 organization that's trying to help businesses get started. Can get a little interesting there. But a lot of what our services end up coming down to is offering workshops. So we do workshops on feasibility studies, Co-op 101, what are your bylaws and articles of incorporation, all sorts of nitty gritty kind of workshops that might be needed for our co-ops. As to why we do this, we know that cooperatives have been basically an established practice in so many different communities throughout our United States history. So hopefully we'll get into some of the reasons why this is so crucial today. Yeah, and that's where I'll leave it for now. So, and thank you again for being with us. Thank you to Georgia Organics for hosting us today.
Thanks so much, Matthew. Aja, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Unmute.
Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us this afternoon. Really excited to be here. Thank you, Kayla and Ashley. Looking forward to speaking with Eric and Matthew and Terrence and learning so much more about this amazing work everyone is doing. My name is Aja Simons, and I'm the General Manager and Cooperative Director for Sevananda Natural Foods Market. Been with that organization for this is my 15th year. Was there for about 10 years. Then left and came back. It's been about 4 years now in this particular role. Sevananda is about 47, will be 48 later this year. So we're kind of in between the Federation as well as Georgia Center for Development for Co-ops. And we are a consumer-owned business, and we were established in Wisconsin because currently there still isn't a Georgia law that I'm aware of that we were established in. So back in 1974, we were established, and in 1995, we became an official cooperative. As point, they decided they wanted the money that was being accumulated in, and so cooperative in 1995. They're working with the 7 cooperatives, trying to master the model every day. We have 4,200 member owners. We're a 9-member board, and about 3 times that much in our shopper base. We are vegetarian and vegan cooperative. Some of the things that we feature are really our service, our incubation of local businesses and farmers, our wellness education, and that's pretty much where we land right now. So I guess that's all I'll say for now for the quick introduction, and turn it back over to Kayla and Ashley. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to pass it right back to Terrence if you have your presentation that you want to go ahead and share.
Yeah. Well, before I get into my comments, I want to first give thanks to you, Ashley, my co-panelists, and everybody at Georgia Organics for inviting us to participate in this conversation. I love the title, Harnessing the Power of the Collective. For me, as a person who has spent more than probably around 25 years of my life working in some capacity around human rights, social justice, and economic justice, I really gravitate to that kind of terminology. And it's also part of really what the Federation is about. So for that reason, I give thanks, but I've titled my remarks today something in the line of harnessing the power of the collective. My comments I've titled Building Economic Power through cooperative development. I've named it that because I think our discussion today, though in some ways framed around agriculture and farming cooperative, it goes way beyond that because the impact of cooperatives is much larger and there are more issues that cooperatives touch on than just agriculture and farming. On one level, one could presume that conversations about cooperatives and farming are very simple and pragmatic. Some might say, isn't this just about helping farmers figure out how to grow food and market their commodities better? Well, I'm here to say that the cooperative economic development model that we propose, especially from the Federation's perspective, is rooted in the context of the Black community and the Black experience, especially in rural America. And it's about that and much more. As it was said earlier, my name is Terrence Courtney, and I'm the Director of Cooperative Development and Strategic Initiatives for the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. My role takes on 3 levels. At the grassroots level, I work in states where we don't have a state association or staff. I work with people at the very basic level, helping emerging groups on their way toward a cooperative development path, providing technical assistance and walking them through the steps from zero to cooperative development. At the regional level, I work with our state coordinators and our state directors to create programs, events, and regional efforts that really start to create a more uniform and stronger regional movement for cooperative development. And at the international level, I lead our efforts to build relationships with other countries around cooperative development, often providing education and technical assistance, but also trying to develop ways that we can have bilateral international trade agreements between our cooperatives and theirs. So my work has afforded me the opportunity to engage members, organizational allies, and individuals at various stages of co-op development, and to learn from our elders, the people who really started this organization back in 1967, to learn directly from them on how the Federation started and its trajectory. But before I go any further, allow me to share a little bit for the unfamiliar about the Federation. We are an organization, as I said, started 53 years ago in Epes, Alabama, and we have offices throughout the South. My particular office is located in Atlanta, Georgia. The Federation emerged out of struggle. During the late 1960s, as we know, the winds of desegregation and much less economic justice had not reached key parts of the South, especially in rural areas. Civil rights workers from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, and CORE, the Congress on Racial Equality, went into these areas and in many ways were themselves transformed by the people they encountered. They met communities who were, yes, oppressed by Jim Crow and economic exploitation, but these same people demonstrated a capacity not only to withstand these cruel injustices, but develop at a very basic level the future model for the organization, cooperatives. You might know that the West Georgia Cooperative is one of those centered foundational cooperatives of the Federation. And moreover, many of these Black farmers were also Black landowners who wrestled with the additional problem of an ongoing and systematic program by local and national forces to rob Black families of land they had earned the right to own. A special combination of people came together and history and created a very unique organizing model for that time. Some of the qualities that made what the Federation was doing at that time uncommon were, one, early on, organizers intersected issues of racial justice, economic justice, with bottom-up approach to organizing. The organizing centered in Black rural America versus major urban cities. 3, Black women were central to the work and held key leadership roles both in local cooperatives and in the emerging regional structure. 4, Black farmers were the core membership from the very beginning. Out of all this, the mission for the organization became clear: cooperative economic development, land retention, and advocacy. So we chartered in '67, and we started off with 22 cooperatives spread across the South. Today, we've grown to over 75 cooperatives owned and operated by Black farmers, landowners, residents, and workers. In fact, our regional assets amount to millions of dollars, and it's all wholly owned by the membership. But that's our story up to this point. There's much more we have to do to fully realize our mission and vision. Part of that involves supporting other communities, especially those of working class and of color, to develop their own cooperative development plans and strategies. So I'm grateful to be with you today to share some of the ways that we have seen positive outcomes through cooperatives and hear your thoughts and questions about strategies for advancing cooperative development among the members of our society that need it most. As the saying goes, now more than ever, we need conversations like these, don't we? For nearly a year, the coronavirus pandemic has damaged key sectors of the global and US economy, thrusting tens of millions of people into and underemployment and sending economic shockwaves throughout poor and working class communities. In the Black community in particular, where long-standing economic, social, and health disparities were already the norm, the coronavirus has exacerbated the crisis we face. The confluence of all these issues erupted in a re-energized racial justice movement sparked by ongoing examples of racialized violence by police at the behest of white supremacist capitalist patriarchy. All the while, Black farmers struggle at the front lines like first responders with these converging impacts such as climate change, COVID, economic downturn, and racial disparity. Despite this, farmers continue to produce the food needed by so many hungry communities in the moment of crisis. So the times are pleading to us for solutions to historic problems. And I guess that explains why I have received such a large increase in the number of emails and calls inquiring about co-op development. People are thirsting for knowledge, even at the most basic level. And too often they come across ideas and information that muddies their understanding about co-op development. Even with people who claim to have spent years working on co-ops, I repeatedly find myself having to define a co-op versus nonprofits and traditional businesses, struggle to understand with folks the need that the co-op is trying to fill. We have to work on proclaiming the importance of feasibility studies because so many people skip this step. We have to express why a co-op needs a business plan. We constantly have to emphasize the principles of co-ops and frame co-op financing, not so much around grant dependency, but on member equity. These are powerful challenges at the basic level. But after my presentations, they usually realize two things. One, cooperatives can be the go-to model for agricultural production, but it can also serve as a complete community revitalization strategy. Two, democracy and equity are central to the model. Consequently, we have to rethink the ideas around our ideas around ownership, power relations, and what might be called our utopian vision for the future. And that's what cooperatives are all about, bringing people together for the collective, and not just the individual empowerment through what's called a praxis, that is the interaction between theory and practice, putting that into action. Now, people often ask the Federation or me about our successes, and we have two kinds. One are the interpersonal farmer-based successes, and two, the institutional successes. The farmer-based successes involve using our legal support system and advocacy to save Black land. We've developed co-ops that have operated successfully for decades. We're using cooperatives to aggregate and market collectively to maintain and increase farmer incomes. And we're creating local jobs through worker-owned cooperatives and producer cooperatives. But I argue that our more influential successes were on the institutional level. The Federation was central in creating some of the most key pieces in urban farming and rural farming today. 53 years ago, we actually withstood scores of political and financial attacks from white supremacist entities and survived to support co-ops today. We spearheaded the creation of programs that directly benefited farmers, especially those of color and women farmers, such as the 2501 and the SDG, the Socially Disadvantaged Group Grant. We won Black farmer lawsuits, and we won key victories in democratizing rural electric cooperatives, such as Black Warrior. These successes notwithstanding, massive changes remain for us to grapple with. For example, we have identified two big barriers to the growth of cooperatives in the South. The first barrier is a structural barrier, that is, such as lack of enabling legislation. You may know that throughout the South, there isn't strong legislation to promote cooperatives in diverse industries. You mostly have a focus on agriculture, support for rural electrics, and credit unions. We believe we need enabling legislation to help us diversify the kinds of cooperatives we can build while maintaining and instituting the democratic principles that sometimes get jettisoned when we form cooperatives in other ways. We also want to struggle with the exclusion of cooperatives from SBA, Small Business Administration loans, due to the collective ownership structure of co-ops. We also want to struggle against the problem of the NCUA, the National Credit Union Administration, which puts limitations on the size of financial holdings and membership of credit unions. This is a problem because it disempowers local communities from forming locally based small credit unions that can provide financial support outside of the big banks and bigger, larger credit unions. So these are the structural problems we have to deal with to make cooperative development stronger in the South. We also have some cultural, or what might be called social barriers, which are many farmers are aging out. It's a very old population. Most farmers are in their late 50s and 60s. So we have to find ways to get younger people involved. And two, we have to really engage this growing interest among Black farmers who are landless, who lack land, but who are nonetheless interested in helping to strengthen our food system at that level. So clearly these are very big challenges. In some ways, they're existential in their importance. And this was way before the pandemic. When COVID-19 struck earlier this year, we had cooperatives that lost nearly 70% of their revenue due to the closure of markets. Our cooperative model helped farmers weather that storm by harnessing and redirecting resources to Black farmers identified through our farmer assessment system. We also had staff across the region work with folks to get technical assistance on how farmers can apply for CARES Act resources. And thirdly, in collaboration with the USDA, we implemented a regional food box program that met a twofold need. One, we got food out to needy families. Two, we provided markets to farmers who needed outlets for their commodities. But that's just how our cooperative model has enabled us to respond to urgent needs. The structural and social barriers are the problems that we have to take a lot more time to work on, and it's going to take a lot more people to address. For that, our strategy is pretty straightforward, albeit protracted. And to a large degree, it's dependent on the unpredictable conditions created by our changing historical context. But for us, it's key. We got to educate people about the need for enabling legislation. We have to build coalitions with other cooperatives to aggregate our power. And we have to use advocacy and organizing to influence decision makers. So I think this is a good place to close. because in essence, what I want to leave you with is that the cooperative model can be a powerful instrument to help farmers and working people. And it can be a powerful model for addressing issues around gender justice and racism. Cooperatives can help us advance our economic interests in any industry or sphere of society. Cooperative economics has historic roots and it goes back millennia. It has international connections. It's built on values like fairness and sharing, and even love in the best examples. And cooperatives provide you and I with the means to organize ourselves. And that's a wonderful thing and what we need in this moment in history. Thanks again to the organizers of Georgia Organics for the invitation to speak. We at the Federation are grateful to have had this time to discuss these important issues. I look forward to hearing your thoughts and hearing your questions. Thank you.
Take it away, Eric.
All right, good afternoon again, everyone. And once again, my name is Eric Simpson, and I'm with the West Georgia Farmers Cooperative, and I'm going to share a presentation with you all that will serve as my contribution to this webinar today. And thanks again to Georgia Organics for putting this on. And it's a pleasure to be on this with such great colleagues and comrades. And I must say, just starting off, as I listened to Terrence talk about the history of the Federation in this start, and you can see in the bottom right-hand corner of this first slide, established 1966. West Georgia Farmers Cooperative will be 55 this year, so we are a year older than the Federation, but we have the unique distinction of being one of the founding cooperatives of the Federation that started a couple of these cooperatives in the South got together and decided we needed a federation. And West Georgia was one of these cooperatives, and we also served under their umbrella. And if there's one person that connects both West Georgia and the Federation, one esteemed person, that will be Mr. Ralph Page, who's no longer with us, but he was a personal neighbor of mine and later a friend and a mentor. And so when anybody that's done this work, we know who Mr. Page is. And so just want to acknowledge the Federation and Mr. Page. So who are we, West Georgia Farmers Cooperative? Well, just some quick shots of some of our folks. We were founded in 1966 primarily as an agricultural cooperative, which we still are today. But we were pretty much almost exclusively farmers back then. But today we are farmers, urban gardeners, education advocates, activists, organizers, culinary entrepreneurs, value-added producers, and the like. And these are just a few of our good-looking people here that help us do what we're doing today. And just a quick walk down memory lane. The cooperative is just that. It's a collective-owned business that's owned by the community. It's a democratic organization. And of course, and these are some of the people that occupied this role in this West Georgia space certainly before I did. I joined this organization in 2012 as a small farmer living in the West Central Georgia area, heard about the cooperative, and I knew about the power of the collective once I discovered there was a cooperative in my neighborhood. And that was pretty exciting. And of course, and I won't bore you with the definition of a cooperative. We got experts here that can get deeper into that. And of course, in just continuing down memory lane, just where we've been before, we had greenhouse operations for the purpose of providing seedlings to the collective and some of those other purposes that you see in those bullet points. During the days of the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, even up to the 80s, the Federation was actually the manager for Heifer International program. And Heifer International served small scale poor farmers all over the world. But at that particular time, Black farmers in the South was pretty much considered on par economically with other third world country farmers because of the economics of the Blacks in the South. And so we were able to harnessing resources from Heifer International. And as anybody that's familiar with Heifer International, you know that one of the things that they provide their small scale farmers is like livestock and some other things, seedlings. And this is one of those big bulls that Heifer International shared with us back in the days that we used to propagate these heifers and, of course, and start small farmers with some cattle operations that we could aggregate and sell beef to the community and to other institutions that will purchase our products. Same with our hogs here. It's amazing how things come full circle now. This is about 40, 50 years ago when the Atlanta Journal and Constitution were doing these articles on the cooperative, and particularly our cooperative. And one of our bigger enterprises was a feeder pig operation, which really served us well. And of course, and so we move on to today, and this is just a few of our farmers that's been a part of the co-op at any given time. Some are no longer affiliated with us, but this was a photo that we took for one of our food hub customers back in the days. And speaking of aggregating food for larger markets, that's kind of how we rebuilt West Georgia Farmers Cooperative into the cooperative model that it is today. Early on, some of our business was selling to larger institutions such as hospitals and schools, high schools, universities. And one of our earlier customers was this food hub in Southwest Atlanta. And they were the hospitals in Atlanta, a lot of Atlanta's major hospitals were sourcing food from this food hub, and they still are today, I believe. And these hospitals, about 7 of them, formed this group called the Morrison Healthcare Group, which were the contracted cafeteria nutrition service providers for the hospitals. And that organization were the ones that would actually procure and serve this food to the staff. And this is just a picture at one of our farms that some of our farmers took. And on the left, you'll see some of the chefs that were handling the food. And this is kind of like the end product. And of course, it almost makes you want to go to the hospital, right? But no, you don't have to go to the hospital necessarily to get this food. And so this is kind of like the end product. And we take a lot of pride in the fact that we are able to sell local food to major retailers and wholesalers that will end up on the plates of someone. And of course, and this is our hardworking board president, Mr. Darrell Copeland, and his wife at one of the events at one of our customers at the time. And so that's what we've been doing. And also we started locally. Of course, West Georgia Farmers Cooperative, in addition to being fierce cooperative champions, championing the cooperative economic model as we have for 50 plus years, we're also local food champions. By the way, I'm also a member of Georgia Organics and a board member of Georgia Organics, and we share that mission of championing local food. And about four years ago, we started this quest of connecting with our local school systems. This school system is in the same county where our headquarters is located, which is Hamilton, Harris County, Georgia. And of course, we were able to do farm to school early on when it was just beginning to take hold as a concept and a program before it became too regulated. Regulations were pretty simple. Schools had a lot of flexibility in how they could deal with local farmers. And we were able to take advantage of that. And as you can see here, we've got a nice little haul of our produce, and that's one of our farmers who was with the co-op at the time. And the gentle lady who's receiving that food is one of the cafeteria workers. Our school system is blessed to still have cafeteria workers. Not all school systems have outsourced their cafeteria nutrition services to the Aramarts and Sodexos of the world, and Harris County just still happens to be one of those systems. This system is 8 schools, maybe 5,200 students, so it's a small system. And of course, this also kind of helped launch our accelerated aggregation, where we're able to provide those markets to a lot of our farmers with, of course, schools and institutions. And then we'll move on to where we've kind of evolved to at this point in time. So that's our little short trip down memory lane to the from the distant and the not so distant past. And so now we get into today. Everybody has their 2020 stories about COVID-19, right? And we know the effect, you heard it earlier, the effect that it had on our food systems. And so Georgia Organics, as I mentioned, is a partner. I'm a member. They're champions of this local food system movement that we've been working on that they've been a part of since the 70s. And being as innovative as they are, developed this program called the Georgia Organics Farm to Restaurant Program, which I participated in as a farmer, and our co-op also participated in. And as that program was starting to gain a foothold, we ran into the pandemic. And so there was a huge pivot that had to take place. So obviously people weren't going to restaurants anymore, dining out, because that was a super spreader, right, for the most part. And so the shift came to, so the shift had to be made to not only serve eaters, but more importantly, serve the people that used to serve the eaters. And so farm to restaurant became unintentionally Georgia Food Fight. And Georgia Food Fight was a program where the logistical intent was still the same, which was to source food from local farmers, particularly farmers that grow in Georgia that are sustainable or organic or natural, but more importantly, local, and connect them to many of these same restaurants that had laid off or furloughed or out of work chefs and waiters. And so we were able to deliver into this program from April to the end of October, weekly without fail. And of course, it was due to the resiliency of the food systems that we worked so hard to create over the last few years. We were able to finally demonstrate that and of course, and deliver during these tough and pressing times. And not only did that model work in Georgia, some other people took note of it from other states. And due to our relationships with some of these high-end restaurants that we've been serving to, and of course, they have partners and colleagues. And so other states started to try to put together their own programs to give relief to their restaurant workers in their states. And one in particular was the state of Kentucky. And this program was called the Restaurant Workers Relief Program, also known as the Lee Initiative. And our cooperative was able to deliver for the Lee Initiative as well to some of the same restaurants, but also to different restaurants that weren't a part of Georgia Food Fight. And so we were pretty busy during the pandemic, especially during the spring, early spring to late fall months, getting our product out and building our brand and reputation at the same time. And it definitely was a collective effort. And of course, and that's the advantage of serving in a cooperative. And of course, and that work paid off because we ended up being recognized for that work with this prestigious award here, which is the Good Food 100 Restaurants list. And we were awarded the Farm and Purveyor of the Year for 2020. And we received this award in early November, toward the end of the year. And this award was only given to 5 entities, either farmers or groups, and we represented the Southeast. So we are the Southeastern representative of this Good Food 100 Restaurants list. And this Good Food 100 Restaurants, they include some of your high-end restaurants in Atlanta. Georgia's blessed to have maybe 100 to somewhere between 100 to 200 farm-to-table restaurants. And these are restaurants that design their model to capture local food from locally grown farmers, good, clean, wholesome food that we promote, that our farmer practices support. And the customers who patronize these restaurants, they know and appreciate this, and they are willing to pay the money that just shows how much they value this food. And so, and this food system. And so we really appreciated that. And so that takes us to where we're going. There's so much that you can do with cooperative, as was mentioned earlier. And cooperatives take on many forms, but we're trying to build resilient communities, not just farmers, not just co-ops, but the communities that those cooperatives and individuals are a part of. And we are embarking on this journey right here now. We are deep into it. We're working very hard to bring this vision into fruition. And this is our cooperative economic development complex that we call a co-oplex. And you'll see this consists of a credit union, a grocery store, and a shared commercial kitchen. And also you can get gas here. This will be located in the city of LaGrange, Georgia, where I'm from and where Mr. Page is from. And it's kind of central in our West Central Georgia area. And we hope that this will be a model that we can duplicate this development in other locales with similar demographics throughout West Georgia and hopefully throughout the state. And of course, this model is going to be unique given the fact that it's a co-op owned enterprise. Not the store itself is not just co-op owned, but the whole enterprise is co-op owned. Obviously, the credit union that you'll have two cooperatives that'll own this whole entire complex. And of course, 50 to 75% of all of the produce that'll be in this store and sold through these registers will be products that will be made, manufactured, produced by Black farmers, Black cooperatives, local farmers, local cooperatives, regional farmers, regional cooperatives, women-owned. That's the intention for our product mix, and we're hard at work recruiting and building the capacity of the suppliers that we've already designated and identified and are working with to make sure that we're all retail ready when these doors open. The target for this project is December the 31st of 2022. Notice we gave the last day of the year just to give us time. That's a reason we feel like that's a reasonable timeline. We've been working on this project for about a year now, and it's quite a capital intensive program, but that's where the power of cooperatives come into play. And we hope that through this model that we can really truly demonstrate the possibility of the cooperative model, because all 7 principles will be in effect to bring this into fruition, particularly number 3, economic participation. And so this is what keeps us up at night right now, and this is what kind of preoccupies us. In addition to what we're constantly doing, some of the slides that I showed you earlier, we are still growing and producing and selling food week after week. We've got a truck pulling a cooling trailer, not a semi 18-wheeler, truck pulling a cooling trailer, but it's full, going to Atlanta to take our various holdings. And this is our humble place of abode here. And this is where we have our meetings. This building is owned free and clear by our cooperative. This building was built by the hands of our cooperative members back in the early 70s. It's probably about 2,000 square feet, on the inside. There's a barn on the outside that used to house our granary. Being resourceful is something that, of course, when you don't have a lot of resources, you have to do, right? And given the fact that we're in COVID season, we really haven't been able to meet a lot here. We really haven't met here since January of 2020 because of, social distancing. But to support that grocery store, we're looking at converting this building into a small warehouse to be the kind of backstopping, which will also be like a warehouse/food hub. We're situated in southern Harris County, which is in just a little north of Columbus. So we will be strategically positioned to service customers in Columbus down to Albany, as well as going up north 85 where we're currently going. So this is West Georgia Farmers Cooperative then, now, and hopefully in the future. And this ends my slide presentation, and I will turn it back over to our gracious host, and I will now stand ready to engage in any discussion and ask any questions that you may have afterwards. Thank you all for hearing me out.
Thanks so much, Eric. That was awesome to hear about the history and so exciting about what's coming next. We're going to go ahead and do some quick presentations from Aja and Matthew, and then jump right into our moderated discussion so we have enough time for everything. Thanks so much.
Matthew, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you, Aja. And thank you so much again to Georgia Organics and to Terrence and to Eric for those great presentations. So again, yeah, I'll probably be quicker on my remarks. This is Georgia Cooperative Development Center. So we started in 2017, as I mentioned. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we're really focused on providing technical assistance to primarily startup cooperatives, again, of potentially any different shape or size. You know, if you're producer owned, such as our panelists have been mostly referring to here, producer owned, mostly farmer kind of agriculture cooperatives, consumer owned grocery, which we'll talk a little bit about. That's actually my history is in consumer owned grocery co-ops, but also worker owned co-ops as well. So you may have heard of, you know, folks like Richard Wolf starting to talk a little bit more about, you know, worker co-ops, worker ownership, transitioning businesses that currently exist into, you know, purchasing those co-ops as workers, you know, through a worker cooperative. So we can assist with all different types of co-op transactions, so to speak. Just to quickly touch on sort of where my history is coming from. So you can see I'm sort of on the front left here. This is the staff of Daily Groceries Cooperative in Athens, Georgia. This was kind of like my breakthrough cooperative experience, was getting to be involved with a great staff of a grocery store cooperative. Folks are probably more familiar with Sevananda being in the Atlanta area, but if you kind of shrunk Sevananda down into 1,400 square feet and had only 19 staff, you'd start to get a sense of, you know, who Daily Groceries is. And it was our pleasure to, you know, have various types of innovations that were sort of unique to our space. Like we were the first grocery co-op in the state, for example, to do the double EBT dollars. So you can do double bucks, just like you could at a farmer's market. Now you can do those at Daily Groceries Co-op. So we were actually a pilot with Wholesome Way of Georgia as their first grocery store pilot for that project. So I definitely believe that, you know, as others have mentioned, you know, the cooperative model is, you know, geared toward innovation and really servicing needs and meeting people where they are in communities. This picture here was taken actually in Epps, Alabama. So Terrence had mentioned the Rural Training Center of the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. This was definitely a key year in sort of the development of Georgia Co-op Development Center, because in 2012, this conference here called Co-op Econ was actually where I met some of the very people who would become the kind of foundational support to actually forming our 501c3 nonprofit organization, Georgia Co-op Development Center. And it was very much like an eye-opening experience for me, very personally as well as professionally, that, you know, this is the first time that like I got to engage with primarily like Black-owned worker cooperatives. And that was kind of the model that was really kind of coming out. And I could see it from across the South as well, from organizations like, you know, here you can see Carlos with Cooperation Texas. We had Cooperation Jackson present, the Highlander Center up in Tennessee, and the Fund for Democratic Communities in Greensboro, North Carolina. So just a really sort of a pan-Southern cooperative convergence that was really transformative for me. From 2012 to 2015, I had the opportunity to attend St. Mary's University. So this is the only English-speaking cooperative master's program in the English-speaking world, as I mentioned. It's a 3-year master's program in cooperative business, sort of like an MBA program, but really tailored toward the unique needs and aspirations of cooperative businesses. Most of them are Canadian because it is a Canadian-based program, but it is an international program as well. And it was through that I got to visit Mondragon, which is the kind of big worker cooperative complex in Basque Spain, which we won't really get into right now, but is a fascinating place and thing to learn about. This is me at Cooperation Works. So this is kind of the next step of my journey. This is me studying to become a cooperative developer. This was in 2017. There's a 3-part training program called the Art and Science of Cooperative Development. So this is where I became a certified cooperative developer, getting ready to start the Georgia Cooperative Development Center, and with this great cohort of folks, many of whom were in different types of co-ops and industries. This is us after we've kind of gotten started. This is one of our, you know, I don't say premier, but one of our most awesome and publicly awesome co-ops that we're working with, Market 166 and East Point. They have passed their actual 166th member. So being Market 166, that was obviously like an important threshold. So we're really proud of the work that Market 166 has done. And we continue to support them with workshops, just like the one pictured here, which is a business model canvas workshop. That's one of the types of workshops we do with startups. We work with other types of co-ops as well, like Pecan Milk Co-op, a worker co-op. This picture was taken in Sevananda, actually. So Pecan Milk Co-op is a vegan plant milk, Black-owned, queer trans-owned as well. So really amazing kind of product and concept that they're developing. Here's our awesome board of directors. You'll recognize some faces, notably Eric right there. And Aja, unfortunately, Aja's also on our board. She had to leave before we took this picture, but Aja's also on our board. I wish she was in this picture, but we've got a CPA, an attorney, some other folks like Abiodun with Gang Sister Growers doing all different sorts of really interesting, awesome cooperative stuff.
Photoshopping in there.
These are the four pillars of our organization, which I've touched on previously. So we focus on education. That's kind of like opinion leaders, also in school districts. So we try to get into any types of high schools or technical colleges where they're trying to look at entrepreneurial trainings. We try to do education about cooperatives. We do networking with all types of other cooperative development organizations, like some of the ones here, like the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, Regenerate Atlanta, Half on a Community Collective, Village Microfund. There's going to be more organizations in Georgia that are kind of in this co-op development space. Technical assistance being kind of the biggest piece of this, which is actually helping the co-ops and making it easier for them to get started in Georgia. Then we do research. So we look at some of the impacts of economic development on our state. This right here, I apologize, you don't have to see all the numbers of this, but this just shows that economic impact that was found the last time that it was surveyed by the University of Wisconsin. We found there was about 317 co-ops back then. They had wages of about $488 million, assets of $29 billion. So it's big, there's definitely big money in co-ops in Georgia, but we need to kind of update this information and continue to advocate that some of our existing cooperative sectors, like our rural electrics, our EMCs, and our credit unions continue to like reinvest into the startup ecosystem. So we have more resources to help startups is part of what we advocate for. This right here was a picture I created of where are all the co-ops. You can kind of see it a little bit pictorially there between, mostly you can see like dotted around the more rural areas. Of course, the rural electrics, of course, Atlanta is sort of the most considerable hotspot of cooperative development. But we also see a good number of credit unions spread around, as well as other types of like farmer co-ops, healthcare, childcare, all different creative types of cooperatives as well. So far, we've been able to assist about 40 different co-op steering committees. Our client partners, those are the co-ops we're helping are all different sorts of industries from food, technology, automotive, housing, media, creative, as well as cleaning. And why do we do this work? I think Terrence and Eric have given a great overview of like why we do this cooperative development work. But we definitely believe that having more cooperatives in our society makes us a stronger society by increasing equity, solidarity, concern for community and education. Basically, our society will be more resilient over time and actually become more civically engaged and ultimately more democratic because we have the ability to practice democracy in our cooperatives when we punch in and we punch out. We're coming into work with democracy. That's just such a fertile training ground for democratic practice. So that's kind of the hope of how society will change as we get to have more cooperatives. And with that, I will cede the floor to Aja.
All right. I think we're at 5 o'clock, right, Kayla and Ashley, and I want to make sure the stars of the show, we jump into the questions with Terrence, Matthew, and Eric. So I don't know that I could do Sevananda justice in a few minutes. So I'm just going to do quick highlights and then we can jump into questions with our panelists, if that's okay, everybody. All right, so.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Name, everybody I think is pretty much familiar with the name. This is what it means. It's a Sanskrit word for Sevananda, for service is bliss. I'm going to just go to highlights. We talked about some of this earlier. Full service grocery store. I think one thing to mention is that Sevananda is a part of a large, vibrant network of natural foods co-ops in the nation. We are there's only 3 vegetarian vegan co-ops in the US, and there's about 160 to 180 approximately co-ops in the vibrant network of the cooperative grocers. So we're a part of that group, which is growing all the time. And then these are just some general highlights. Most of you who know Sevananda, we're a full service grocery, so we have everything, right? Some of the things we focus on is great service, knowledgeable staff, and wellness education. Let's see here, just highlighting some of the principles for us. Two, democratic member control. That's one we always have to be reminded of over time. Education and training to really, really give folks an idea of what it is they become a part of, and that it's different and unique. And during COVID, that's been a challenge actually, because we're so focused on running the store. It's difficult to actually lean into the actual co-ops aspects of the business. The education and training is huge on that. So we're looking to do more of that, along with cooperation among cooperatives like today and concern for community. Challenges, co-ops don't come without their challenges. Seems like there's a cycle to everyone. They have their own cycle of challenges to remind us of what cooperation means and how we can master that. And then here just are some ideas for future. Of course, COVID brought us to a whole different space, being an essential business all of a sudden and not knowing what that even meant. We thought we were essential before we were dubbed essential, but it meant something else all over again. And so we had to figure out what that meant for us. And now we're looking to more digital and virtual platforms. But in addition to that, just in real time, warehouse space, we have warehouse space that we're not using. We have equipment upgrades, we have expansions to do. And so this is where we're kind of looking to do more cooperation among cooperatives with and having more and more partners to help fill out some of this work that we don't often have a chance to do, but other people are masters of it, and we can combine efforts and really thrive all together. Private labels, and a host of other projects that we're working on. So lastly, I'll mention just on the digital landscape that, well, before that also, we're focusing on more of the local vendors. We've always incubated local vendors, and we just see a really, really huge opportunity to incubate them even more. And it's different pieces from labeling to invoicing to creating their product quality control, just all the different pieces that we can support them in as they're along the way. Insurance, PLUs, barcodes, just a host of different pieces that we try to support other co-ops in as they're coming up, or just local businesses as they're coming up. We're really trying to lean into more technology, conveniences, online ordering and delivery, of course, looking at satellite stations where we can have a variety of co-ops. So we're not just looking to be one big co-op, but smaller satellites that we can connect together. And also creating and connecting more of the ecosystems that already exist, bringing those together as well. Virtual consults to continue our education and to help people support them through their health challenges and different imbalances, and having virtual consults in advance to do that. And again, adding more technology and conveniences. So I'll stop there so we can move to our panel discussion. And of course, folks can reach out to me anytime if there's anything here that sounds of interest or that you'd like to partner with us on or innovate and brainstorm together. So I'll ask Kayla and Ashley if it's okay for me to go ahead and start the questions.
Please do. Can't wait to hear.
All right, well, let's do it. Guys, you ready? Terrence, Matthew, Eric? Let's do it. All right, and also thank you to everybody who is listening and watching today. Thank you so much again for being with us this afternoon and spending time with us. I'm full already just from the presentations, you know, so this is dessert. We're going for dessert now with the guys. So again, and Kayla and Ashley, thank you as well. And Georgia Organics, always just doing amazing quality work. And it's just an honor to be a part of this today. So let's get started. I don't know we'll get through all of these questions here, but I will start here. How do you think the new Emergency Relief for Farmers of Color Act could affect cooperative development? And I would direct that to Terrence, and then if either Eric or Matthew want to chime in.
Well, thanks. As I mentioned before, part of our work, one of our parts of our mission is advocacy, and you know, the Federation has already been in conversation with you know, some of the folks involved in crafting this legislation or this bill. So I'll be glad to share some of the thoughts that, you know, we've already started to have around this. So some of the things that we're thinking about, the positives are, you know, it could provide grants and loans to improve land access and address heirs property issues. We see it as support for one or more of our legal centers in the South focused on agricultural and legal issues. You know, we've been doing a lot of pilot projects here and there on issues around land acquisition, financial planning, and technical assistance. So there may be some support for the work that we do in the area. In terms of racial equity, we would love to see a commission and related activities to address systemic racism across the USDA and support research and education and even extensions at HBCUs and institutions of higher education, scholarships. And, you know, it may be useful to us in terms of the outreach, mediation, financial training, and all these things that we already offer. But again, having that kind of support helps bolster the work. In our minds, this is one of the pieces that we want to utilize in addressing that issue that we said is pervasive in the South, which is a lack of enabling legislation to support the full diversification, because we can build co-ops without enabling legislation, but I believe that that's less advantageous than having the same kind of statutes that you find in California or in Wisconsin, because over time, without it, we can't really access the same kind of resources traditional businesses can. We don't have the same tax incentives. And we see a slow drift away from democratic principles as the business attempts to compete in the open market with traditional capitalist entities. So we think this is a good start. Of course, we want to work on it to be better, but we already see some of the ways that it will help our work.
Very good. Thank you for that. I can tell you're a strategist. Eric or Matthew, either of you want to chime in on that one, or should we go to the next question?
I'll defer to Matthew. I have nothing for that. I'll give it to the cooperative developer.
Okay, yeah, I would just add into it that, you know, we definitely see certain elements, obviously very like crucial issue and crucially needed addressing so many of those historic aspects of racism within the USDA. There's just so much reform, I think, that can be built into the reforms of the USDA. You know, for example, so many of our co-op development centers depend on a funding pool called the Rural Co-op Development Grant. And that pool has been basically capped for the past, I want to say, 2 decades. So there's just an urgent need for more funding for cooperative development just across the board. And hopefully that, you know, this can start to break away into some of the ability to do that. I also think that we need to start thinking also about like succession planning. You know, there's a lot of that going on right now with the worker co-op space about like, you know, aging business owners selling their businesses to their employees. I think we should build in some of the very same incentives for, you know, aging farmers to be able to sell their farms to people who work at those farms. For example, there needs to be more tax incentives. There needs to be more education to make that easy for folks who are aging out of their farm.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Matthew. All right. How do cooperatives better leverage USDA or other government grants? I'm going to pose that to you, Eric. How do cooperatives better leverage USDA or other government grants?
Well, and I can speak from experience. I think there was some mention earlier about one of the grants that the Federation is actually kind of dreamed up and kind of invented, for lack of a better term, a couple of grants historically that Black farmers and organizations have been able to access. The later of which has been Socially Disadvantaged Groups Grant, which is a USDA Rural Development Grant that we're using to do some of the very work that I shared with you on some of my slides. A lot of that work is done via a USDA Rural Development Grant. The cooperative can leverage that by utilizing cooperative resources. Within a co-op, you've got a lot of different people with different gifts and talents and skills. So, you know, you have people hopefully within your mix that can do that. But if you can't do it in-house, then you partner. You use the P6 principle that we use, and you partner with people like Georgia Cooperative Development Center, which I also happen to be a board member of, and the Federation of Southern Cooperatives. And you utilize those same principles to partner and to access resources like we use as farmers to go out and get other things. And so, and because a lot of what I've seen is a lot of the USDA grants now, especially within the last 5 years, it seems to put an emphasis on collaborations, whether it's community collaborations or partners or whatever. I think co-ops are right to be able to take advantage of a lot of those resources that are out there for their development and growth.
Okay, very good. Well, let's talk about that a little bit more in terms of P6. Do you, each of you, work with other cooperatives? Some of you have talked about some of the cooperatives that you do work with, but share a little bit more about cooperatives that you work with and how you're actually, strengthening, exploring those relationships, and what else we can do there. Let's start with Terrence.
Well, thank you. Well, I also wanted to just kind of chime in on the leveraging piece because I want to I want to take this as an opportunity to get on my soapbox, because one of the things that I've been doing, with emerging cooperatives that come to us is to help folks think not so much about how do we access grants, but how do we build successful businesses? Success being defined by businesses that are generating surpluses, or to use perhaps a more vulgar term, profits. So, what I'd like to suggest that folks think about is, if you think about leveraging grants, think about leveraging them in the direction that leads to self-sustainability, not ongoing grant renewals and dependence. But in terms of the partnerships, I mean, we partner at very different levels. Matthew gave you one example where annually we have an event we call Co-op Econ, which is an event that brings together cooperative development minded people throughout the South in particular to come together to think about, to educate ourselves and each other around co-op development and to come up with strategies, if you will. And that's an annual event. And we really focus on communities of color, because often we are on the margins of any economic development project, but also we welcome women, people of in the LGBT community, and anybody in the South who feels exploited by our system of economics. Also, at the national level, we partner with various national entities like Co-op Bank, CoBank, NCBA, the National Cooperative Business Administration. We partner with National Food Grocers Association. There are so many, to be honest with you, I can't keep up with all of them. And, we partner locally, with folks. So it's quite a bit there, but I think at the end of the day, we're always looking for opportunities to not just partner with folks to do it, but we're looking for principal partnerships and partnerships that lead to building capacity in the South and really driving a movement of transformation at the grassroots level. So that can sometimes be difficult in the conversation, because I think thinking strategically, where work is duplicated, you then have to find ways to support each other in ways that don't require duplication of work. So it could be a very complex task. It's not one that you can approach simplistically, but nonetheless, it is a necessary component to what I believe revolutionary transformation looks like.
All right, very good. Thank you, Terrence. Okay, let's go to Matthew and Eric. Same question. I mean, because this is the crux of the talk, right? The power of the collective. So Matthew, let's go to you. And then Eric, please chime in.
Awesome. Thanks, Aja. Yeah, so I was going to speak a little bit about the ecosystem and the way that we kind of try to partner to, we definitely we are always on the lookout to see who the potential partners are on the ground. But also some of that I think is trying to identify gaps too, of are there places where certain types of services aren't necessarily even currently available, or maybe there's a partner who can help jump into that. So for example, we've been stitching together a bit of a network of small, fairly similar sized in scope, kind of solidarity or social economy organizations like Georgia Cooperative Development Center partnering with, Regenerate Atlanta. So Regenerate Atlanta is a loan fund. So they have an access to capital piece, similar with the Village Micro Fund as well. They're two of our close capital provider partners. They're able to tap into some funding mechanisms for startups who are approaching us, and part of what we know that they need is access to capital. So we need to be go-to for them to have different conversations at different scales of who's going to be the one to actually step in with the capital that this co-op needs when they need it. So if it is something depending on the scale of it, maybe it's something Regenerate Atlanta could field for them, but maybe it's something bigger. Maybe they need something Terrence mentioned, CoBank or National Cooperative Bank. or something in the middle, like a shared capital cooperative. We also have good relationship with them as this kind of co-op focused lender who can kind of jump in and just immediately understand their model because they've built their portfolio on lending to cooperatives. They've been buying for, they're owned by co-ops, they lend to co-ops. So as much as possible, we try to tie in the co-op understanding to anyone that we're partnering with to try to round out the services that we could potentially offer to them. I would also touch on, that basically we go by sector a lot of times. So like if a grocery co-op approaches us, we have a great partnership with Food Co-op Initiative. And we know that Food Co-op Initiative is a national organization dedicated to starting or helping to start grocery co-ops. So we're always plugging in like, okay, if this group has a lot of experience in this area, like Food Co-op Initiative does about grocery, we're always going to bring that partner in because we're only stronger together. So we're just trying to, weave together that ecosystem and only make it stronger, like a patchwork over time.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Eric.
Yes. And just to be real brief, yes, it's strategic. We partner with co-ops that meet our strategic interest and our strategic vision. As you know, with the grocery store, we've already partnered with two phenomenal cooperatives here in Georgia. They're both primarily African-American cooperatives. One is a cooperative that they have a lot of beef cattle producers. The intent is for them to be our conventional beef supplier for the grocery store. And then we have a co-op of fishermen, of course, that we're working with. And we also partner with GCDC to develop those cooperatives as far as, some of their business plans and some of the technical things that they need to do in order to be ready to be legitimate and to be official. So, so those are two cooperatives that just jump out immediately that I know that we're spending a lot of time working with for that strategic purpose.
Okay, very good. Let's see. I think we've got a couple more, well, 5 minutes, maybe 5 to 7 minutes. Kayla and Ashley can time check us. Let's see. What do you see as the biggest challenge that cooperative models face? I know earlier on, Terrence mentioned feasibility. Engagement comes up for us a lot. There's the legislation pieces as far as Georgia, but what do you all see as the biggest challenge? Maybe name one, each of you, and then we'll go to the next question. Let's start with Matthew this time.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, there are certainly big ones. And I definitely would agree. So yeah, Terrence named structural as well as cultural. I think to drill into that a little bit more, I think the way I would respond to it is access to a broad educational network is just so crucially needed for our co-ops. There was like an opinion survey that was done by NCBA-CLUSA, which is like the National Co-op Advocacy Organization. And they found something like, I want to say 70% of Americans would prefer to do business with a cooperative in any type of financial transaction they're making in their lives, whether that's looking for credit, looking for groceries, paying their utilities, just going shopping at a mall. Like people would prefer to do business with cooperatives. But in that very same survey, they also found that about the same number of Americans also could not tell you what a cooperative was. So there's this huge disconnect between like, we want to do business with co-ops, but we don't know what that even means.
Yep.
So the educational piece of this is just couldn't be overemphasized, I think. It actually used to be one of our co-op principles was constant education. We say it kind of differently these days. We say education, training, and information.
Right.
But really the constant piece of that is what really needs to be drilled home there is like, we need to be always educating all these different levels to where, the fact that MBA students graduate and they've never even heard of co-ops, like that is just ridiculous. Like we need business students, we need everyone in this ecosystem who in any ways are touching entrepreneurship, touching the economy. We need them understanding co-ops and we need to do it at all levels.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I know. And I mentioned it on my slide because it just internally, just having the people that are working in a co-op really understand what they've been a part of is a whole other thing, let alone the external stakeholders that keep coming in. So it's a constant, I can't agree with you more in terms of the emphasis on that and the importance of that. Eric, your thought on that, please?
I echo pretty much exactly what Matthew said. Principle 5, education, information, and training. You can't get enough of it because it's definitely cultural. Even the communities that we work in, 99.9% of the people agree that we need to be working together. We need to pool resources, but they don't know about the cooperative model.
Yeah.
And of course, and that's in the cultural root of that is our educational system for the most part, because we've been conditioned toward capitalism, and that's going to take some time and more. Principle 5.
All right, very good. Terrence, did you want to weigh in on that, or do we want to go to the next question?
Yeah, I'll weigh in. I'm struggling because I agree, but I also think that let's imagine if people were educated about cooperatives in a more regular fashion or holistic way. We still have this lack of enabling legislation in the South that is a real barrier. As I said, in most states in the South, only a couple of kinds of co-ops are officially recognized. You got your ag, you got your credit union, and you got your rural electrics. Now, the rural electrics power companies, they're ostensibly co-ops, but in many regards, they don't operate as such. And starting one up for the average community seems to be a very big hill to climb. Credit unions have these issues now where the NCUA has put these stipulations on how they can, the size they must be and the number of members. So that's out of reach. And now you have the fact that we don't have enabling legislation. So even if I imagine, even if people knew, we have these structural barriers that prevent us from really entering in a real robust way various sectors of the economy that will give us the power to really transform conditions. So while I agree, I'm at pains to disagree. I won't say I disagree. I just want to add a supplementary idea to what's been said.
All right, very good. So we've got a couple minutes here. So I think there were two, and now which one do I ask in the time that we have? But there was a little mention of the community building aspects that can be built into the bylaws of a cooperative. And if you see ways that we can do that when forming a cooperative. Why don't we start there? Yeah, so when forming a cooperative, just the best way to build in the community building aspects of that, either through the bylaws or some other aspect of the formation. Eric?
The formation itself to me is community building because you have a broad, you have in many cases tens to hundreds of people that once you assign them a role, and then there you see principle number two in effect, the democratic process, because they have a voice, a vote, and maybe even a financial interest. So, so it doesn't really take a lot of work.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about the model of a cooperative, because it's kind of already self-democratizes by its form.
Yeah.
But only thing we have to be careful of is just to make sure that it's not operating just as a co-op in name only, that you actually have it structured in the practice and the culture really reflects the theory and the spirit of co-op.
Well said. That's well said. And that's number 7 as well. Concern for community, right? Built in there. Anybody else on that particular question before we close out?
Yeah, I just want to support what Eric said. And again, here I go, my broken scratch record. One of the great things about states that have enabling statutes is that the democratic principle is embedded in the business model itself. Outside of that, you just gotta hope everybody embraces the idea as you develop your bylaws and as you develop community. But what we've found is that, in this society, people have internalized some of the worst ideas. So they come to the table with that. And so building community is not a kumbaya moment often. It's a struggle over ideas and process and strategy. And it could paralyze a group sometimes, or sometimes if not dealt with properly, you can see a co-op splinter and fracture years down the road. So we live in a society that internalizes, oppressive ideas. And unfortunately, people come to the table with that and you have to work it out. That's part of building community, but it's not easy.
Well said. Well said. Kayla and Ashley, do we have time for one more question?
Actually, I would love to answer for the panelists to answer one of the questions from the audience. We had a lot in the Q&A, and unfortunately, we're not going to have time to get to them, and maybe folks can connect with y'all after. But one that I think is relevant to our conversation is from Judith Winfrey. How can we help support the development of laws more favorable to co-ops in Georgia and beyond? What can participants on this call do to support the work?
You want to start with Eric?
Well, I'll use the old adage, contact your local representative, whether it's your congressman or your state representative in your district, your state senator, start there and lobby them, tell them we want better enabling cooperative statutes.
Yeah, very good. Matthew?
I want to say yes and to that. So don't go it alone. Make sure you're getting with your fellow cooperators about that and doing it in structured ways, because the people, our policymakers and folks who are elected officials, they respond to people power. So as much as you can get with your neighbors, get with your peers, get with your co-op associations, in fact, if you can get in touch with them, there's actually a lot of lobbying power in the cooperative movement, but a lot of it is out of sight sometimes because it's for the folks that we've touched on. So it's for the credit unions, it's for the rural electrics. They've got quite a lot of paid lobbying power. Part of what we have to do is bring that collaboration together to where we make clear to some of those existing co-op structures what is needed on the ground. Because folks who haven't been a startup in 50 plus years, they don't really remember, and it was totally different when they were starting. So they need to understand that we don't have a consumer co-op statute. We don't have a worker co-op statute, that, a lot of these federal programs don't even apply. They don't even mention co-ops. We need to make clear eligibility for programs. All that stuff needs to happen collaboratively, and we need to be really savvy about how we advocate for that. And engaging with partners like NCBA CLUSA, who I mentioned previously is kind of our national body, making sure that they're engaged too, because they do quite a lot of lobbying on behalf of all types of cooperatives. Make sure we're letting them know, as we have demands, and getting organized around all those and getting on the same page.
Well, that's a master exercise in cooperation. It's like this one big giant project that we can all be working on together, if we have it organized enough. And as Terrence was saying earlier, that's kind of like you can start working on something and then you get tripped up because of legislation or something else that's not paving the way for you doing what you're doing. So to try and get ahead of it is, I think, what Judith is alluding to. Terrence, did you want to add anything to that question?
Yeah, it's almost like jazz. I heard Miles, then I heard Bird, and now Mingus. But I'll just say, for my part in this riff, is that we're shooting for the third Saturday in April for our other annual event called the Co-op Symposium. And we use this as an event to bring together the elected officials, our members, and the public to talk about enabling legislation and what we can do together. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what Kwame Ture would say: organize, organize, organize.
All right, very good. Kayla, I guess I'll turn it back over to you. But before I do, I wanted to say thank you to our panelists, Terrence and Matthew and Eric. It's been such a pleasure to talk with each of you and listen to you and hear your innovation and your strategies and all the amazing work you're doing for us. And we look forward to hearing more. I look forward to working with you all more. And I'm sure our viewers and listeners also would like to hear more and engage with you. It's been a pleasure. I thank you so much for your time. And I'll turn it back over to Kayla and Ashley. Great job, guys.
Yeah, thank you. This was an incredible panel. I think I'm still processing. I was overwhelmed with all of the engagement that we got from everyone, and I'm definitely going to be rewatching for myself. And yeah, I think, thank you, Terrence, for pointing out your co-op symposium. I think that'll be a great call to action for folks to continue to engage with this work. I'll definitely try my best to be on that. And yeah, as Ashley, I'll just point out, Ashley dropped a little survey in the chat if you scroll up a little bit, and that will just help Georgia Organics be able to continue to create interesting content. And she will also be sending out a follow-up email with the recording and any other information, and we'll try to get some of those questions answered too that we didn't get to. So much gratitude for our panelists, and Aja for being an excellent moderator that was so conscious of the time constraints. And all y'all did an amazing job letting us look at your organization and really engage us with the questions. So so much gratitude for all of you. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.
You're welcome.